Welcome back to Capitol Tonight, a statewide look at politics. I'm Tim Boyne. Court-ordered changes to the state's congressional maps have sitting members of Congress scrambling to change their election plans. To talk about that and much more, Congressman Robert Pittenger, a Republican from the 9th District, joins us from our Charlotte newsroom tonight. Good to see you as always, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening, Tim. Good to be with you.
All right, it's hard not to tackle the presidential race first. We obviously had Donald Trump in the state tonight. We have Hillary Clinton in town tomorrow. You haven't endorsed in this race yet, have you?
I did. I endorsed Marco Rubio.
Oh, you did? Okay. What do you make of the whole Donald Trump phenomenon and its potential role in this? I mean, are you for a broker convention if it takes that?
Well, I'm for the process, and I'm for whoever wins in that process. I think whoever we have on our bench and whoever wins the nomination is certainly 1,000 times better than the alternative of Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton.
So you would vote for Donald Trump if it came to that?
I will vote for the Republican nominee without question. I will fully support him.
All right, let's move on to your election. Wherever and whenever that might take place. We have new congressional maps at the moment. First of all, tell us a little bit about how, under these current maps, your district has changed.
Well, take a drive out 74 till you get to Bladen County, and that's where I end up. So it's about 180 miles long. Certainly it begins at South Mecklenburg and continues through Union County and Anson County, Scotland County, Robeson County, Cumberland County, Bladen County. It's a wonderful group of people. I've already been out in each of the counties. I've had economic development meetings. I've met with sheriffs, met with town folk and party leaders, and whatever. I want them to know that I will represent them. And as we have had the best constituent work in our district, frankly, the House Administrative Office said we were the most responsive office in getting back to people in a timely way of any congressional office. And that's from 31,000 inquiries on policy matters. So we'll be responsive. You know, we've had mobile teams go out and have office hours in Union County. We've had the first ever office opened up in Iredell County. So constituent services are a major part of what I do.
Taking away the politics of it and in the elections, take us behind the scenes of what this has been like for sitting members of Congress. You know, we might see two Republicans now in Elmers and Holding that may have to go up against each other. I mean, have you had conversation with the other folks, and what has it been like?
Well, I think it's troubling. It's very disconcerting when you have districts that are passed by the legislature, approved by the North Carolina Supreme Court, and also approved by the Justice Department of Washington, D.C. And at the same time, 3 federal judges can come in and just wipe out those districts. There's something wrong about that. There's something wrong about empowering a couple of judges. This has happened time and again in major policies. Look what happened with the Obamacare and how just a handful of judges transformed the entire delivery of health care in this country. So it is troubling, the empowerment of federal judges.
What's your take on whether these maps get upheld? I think a lot of people just assume they will, but it seems like if they do uphold these maps, they're basically striking down the Voting Rights Act.
Yes, sir, they are, and that's something that we've tried to uphold. I think the judges, frankly, is politically driven. They would like to carve out more Democrat districts. 2 of the 3 judges are appointed from Democrat presidents. President Obama, President Clinton appointed these judges, 2 of the 3. And so, unfortunately, politics perhaps may play a hand in this, where they would want to increase the number of districts that they have.
So what's your gut tell you on whether these maps get upheld or not?
Well, if they were going to be confirmed, I think they would have done that by now. They've given themselves till March the 18th to make that determination. I was disappointed that Judge Roberts, when he had the chance to issue a stay on this appeal, that was not done. And so now it's back in the hands of this 3-judge panel.
So you think we might see a federal court draw these maps, some new maps?
Well, I think it'll be remanded back to the legislature to do it, and I think if they don't meet with approval, whatever that definition is, then it certainly could be drawn by the federal court.
All right, let's move on to another topic, federal budget. I know you're working with a working group, essentially, on the Republican side. We don't hear about the federal budget, frankly, a lot. The debt has been very little talked about in this presidential race. So what are you doing behind the scenes on that issue?
I do sit on the steering committee of the Republican Study Committee. That's the think tank of our Republican conference in the House. And we have drawn up a budget, has some very key elements. Number one, we need to balance the budget, and it balances over a 10-year period. The current trajectory takes us into $1.5 trillion deficits. We want to reduce and need to reduce discretionary spending. We must reduce mandatory spending. That's the driver. That's what's going to drive this country into financial collapse if we don't do it. We need to reform Medicare, and we need to reform Social Security so that they will be there in the future. Today, on present course, Social Security and Medicare will both not have the funds to support it. We want a budget that supports our military. In this last budget, we just brought in another $50 billion to support the military. It had been decimated. We only have about 2/3 of the ships that we really need. When you look at our Air Force, it's inadequate. You look at our ground troops through the Marines and through the Army, we do not have the battalions and the regiments that we need to have. So considering the major nation states and terrorists that are opposing us around the world, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, including ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Boko Haram and these other terrorist groups, we have major adversaries, and we have to be prepared for that.
Why is it, the debt was such a big issue in the 2012 election. Clearly it's going to take major entitlement and reform. So why is it not a part of this election, do you think? Are you disappointed? Is it just because it's that hard? Very true. You know, after I got elected, we formed a bipartisan group. Congressman Patrick Murphy, a Democrat from Florida, he and I formed this group called United Solutions. And the first objective we had was to reach out to the president. We wrote a letter, had 38 of our freshman colleagues sign the letter, asking the president to address the deficit and address the debt. We have a $19 trillion debt. That is the great elephant in the room. That's what we have to address for the economic survival of this country. And yet the president never, in any inauguration or in any State of the Union, has ever even brought it up. When he came to meet with the Republican conference, all of us in our Republican conference, when he walked in the room, we stood and we clapped. He's President of the United States. But for an hour and a half, when he met with us, he never brought up the debt or the deficits. And at the end of it, a couple of us approached him and said, "Sir, please tell us, what is your take on what we should be doing with the debt or the deficits?" He said, "Well, I'm really not concerned about all that." Well, his budgets reflect that. His budgets show a $3.5 trillion in spending, in new spending. Congressman, just real briefly, we're not hearing that from the Republican candidates this go-around either, are we?
I think it's got to be on the top shelf. It has to be on the radar screen of everyone. It is in our Republican conference. Speaker Ryan is leading on that, and you will see coming out of our Republican conference this year in this House reforms that will be in place. If we can win a Republican president, we are going to push that. That's going to be a mandate, because to save this country, we have to address 2/3 today of our spending as mandatory spending. We have no control over it. By 2026, it will be 78%, not 68% of the budget. So this has to be addressed, and we're going to make that type of commitment to the American people.
Congressman Pittenger, it's good to see you as always, sir. Thank you so much for your time today.
Good to see you too, Tim.
All right, that's it for tonight. Stay tuned for a special edition of Capitol Tonight. Coming up next, conversations with candidates for governor in the U.S. Senate, part of our continuing coverage of Decision 2016. Thank you so much for watching.